Welcome back to another lesson of Logos and Letters. My name is Liam. Let's continue on. So, eti hai protai husiai diato tois alois hapasin hypokaistai kai pantada alla kata tuuton categoraistai en autais ainai diatuto malista usiai legontai. Amazing sentence. Amazing sentence. Just wraps a bow on everything that we've said. Okay, so again, still, eti. Hai pro taiusiai diatatois. Alright, so first substances, alright, those individual, those most lordly, one in number things, those unique things. For example, you are a primary substance. Whoever is listening to this, you are a primary substance. I am a primary substance. Okay, all those who have died and gone before us, they were primary substances. All those who are to be born and to succeed us, they are primary substances. Right? They are potential primary substance. We are actual primary substance, and all those who have died were actual primary substance. All right. So, but coming back to this, all right. So the all other things, tois alois hapasin, primary substances are said to underlie all other things. Underlie, it's like if I just gave a drawing of it. So here is primary substance, okay, and all other things fall upon it. All other things fall upon it. And what falls upon it? Accidents fall upon it, right? And they come and go. They're there one day, and then they're not there the next. All right, well, I didn't mean to delete substance too. If substance changes, that thing gets destroyed. So I'm not trying to destroy any substance here. So they underlie all other things. And listen to this. This is what follows from that. Kai panta da alla kata tuton categoraistai. And all other things are predicated, categoraistai, upon primary substances. A en autes ainai, right? Or I in them. Okay, so we predicate musical of a musician, right? Musician being a paronym. Okay, we predicate. We could actually predicate lonely or solitary. Solitary is probably better. People like this man here aren't rarely ever lonely, but they are solitary. So alone, okay, one in number, without company, we can predicate that of him, right? And why? Because that's a relation and a position thing, okay? Relation and position, going back to chapter 4, some of the supreme genera, okay? Potewen, prosti, relation, position, kaistai, in arrangement. Yeah, we could say that. Okay, so let's continue on. So we can predicate, if this man is 6 foot tall, we can predicate that of him. Okay, but he might not be 6 foot tall when he's 70 years old. He might be 5'11". Okay, so that accident comes and goes. He might have a full head of red hair. Okay, but when he's 70 years old, he has a half a head of white hair. All right, so that comes and goes, and those things fall upon the substance. Yeah, let's proceed on without going over all that old stuff. Where were we? Here we are. And enautai sainai dia tuto malista usiai legontai. And dia tuto, that's going to come up a lot. Dia tuto, sorry. That means therefore, thus, por consiguiente. It means like and on account of this, they are said to be most malista usiai, most properly said to be substances. Hostege hai protai usiai prosta alla pantai kusin. Excellent little thing. Hostege hai protai usiai prosta alla pantai kusin. Right, so the primary substances sort of have all other things. They have them in a sense that all other things existing is a result of a primary substance being there first. Okay, so the green of this plant wouldn't exist without this plant existing first and the green secondarily being in it. Okay, the amount of leaves on this tree needed the tree itself to exist first before those leaves could come about. The height of this man needed the man to exist before the height could come about. All right, so the posture of this boy, or whoever it is, needed the primary substance to exist first before the posture could come about. All right, the action of this, is it a horse or a cow? I'm not sure. This quadruped over there needed the quadruped to exist first before the drinking could start happening. Okay, and this goat, the arrangement, the kaistai of this goat with its four legs raised up, sort of a noble, majestic pose, needed the goat to exist before it could start doing that. So primary substance is first, and that's why it's most lordly. And it's said to sort of have everything. It's sort of like a container in a way, like as we say, a container would have whatever it contains. Okay, coming back to this sentence, so that's why primary substance are most said to be substance and sort of have all other things. Huto kaito aidos prosto genus ekai. So compare these two sentences at the same time and you get a really important message here. So this one and then this one in pink. Huto kaito aidos prosto genus ekai. So pros, it's showing a relationship. First substances with everything else, and then species with compared to genus. What's the real diamond in the muck that we're trying to figure out here? The reason why it said species and genus in that sort of way after saying that is that the species is more of a real feature of our existence than the genus is in this sense, that it's more knowable and it's more discernible, right? Those two words that we looked at in the last lesson, norimoteron, more knowable or more discernible, and oikoteron, more proper. Okay, in that sense, if you compare the species to the genus, it is more knowable, more proper. And same with the first substances to pretty much all other things that exist in a subject. This is more knowable and more proper. Okay, so it's more knowable to know him as your neighbor, if he is your neighbor, than to know his particular accidents. Right, so if you were to meet him for the first time, it would be very strange if you could immediately say what exact height he was or what exact weight he was. All right, these are extreme examples, but they serve us well. But to recognize him down the street the next day would be something that's quite immediate, quite natural and normal. But we don't first recognize that there is a 6'1" man there. We notice that it's our neighbor, because the primary substance is more knowable. The subject itself is more knowable than anything else, in the sense of our minds. Okay, so our minds require different things, like to make something knowable, of course, but when we recognize our friend or our family member, say that's your best friend right there. That's your high school best friend, primary school best friend. She's having a rough day right now, but that's your best friend. if you were walking down a long road and she was at the other end walking towards you, you would probably, because of eyesight issues, you're probably not going to recognize it's your friend immediately. Your brain's going to know just by nature that there is another human there. Okay, but as they come into view and your eyes can start to notice these different particular accidents about your friend, then your friend becomes knowable. So by nature, we sort of know that there is a substance there, and then by our mind, by reason, we know it's our friend. So there's two different ways of knowing: by nature, okay, and by reason. We're going to explore this, ad nauseum, this idea, but this idea is being raised up already here, okay? By nature, the genus is more knowable, but by our mind, the species is more knowable. Why? Because the species is lower on the chain of predication and the genus is higher, right? So you might be thinking, oh God, like how can this be the case? All right, how can this make sense? Well, it's just the way, like, see how I didn't know, I couldn't tell because of eyesight things, if that was a horse or a cow, like a lean looking cow. I'm pretty sure it's a horse, but anyway, I know it's in the genus of animal, don't I? I know that there's an animal there. I know it's a quadruped. Okay, I just can't really discern if it's an animal or a cow. So my mind doesn't know 100% if it's one or the other, but by nature, okay, I know it's an animal. The genus is more knowable by nature, and the species, whatever's lower down the chain of predication, is more knowable by the mind. Norimoteron. All right. You don't have to fully understand this concept right now, but just be aware that the concept is a feature of our existence, a feature of our reality, and a way of our learning, and something that in this logic course will be fully fleshed out and applied and stress tested, okay, and put into different things. I don't know what type of boat that is. I don't know the species of that boat, okay, but I do know it's a boat. So you can see that by nature it's more knowable according to the genus, but by my mind trying to reason and fit it into a particular box, it's less knowable, and so on and so forth. So I'll leave that there. Look, he wraps it up. For the species underlies hypokaitai the genus. It underlies the genus. So look at this. Primary substance here in blue. You can say underlies the species, and the species then underlies the genus. Okay, it's not exactly like that. I'm just using this as a representation. Primary substance, most knowable. And then you've got the species, which is closer to the primary substance. And then you've got the genus, which is further away from the primary substance. Okay, that's a representation of how this is working. We can know this better by nature, and we know this less by nature. Final example to wrap up this is, if we go back to your friend who's having a rough day, all right, all of us know that this is a human being, and we recognize that it's a human being before we recognize it is your friend. If I were to encounter your friend, let's call her Rosalie. All right, so Rosalie on the street, before I know that she is Rosalie, I know that she is she. Okay, I know that she is a human being, and I might then figure out she's having a rough day. All right, but then as I get to know her, I come to find out that she is Rosalie, and thus I recognize her. Okay, before I recognize my neighbor as my neighbor, I recognize him as a human being first. Okay, so you can see how our minds know things better. The more predicates, that we can assign to it, the further down the chain of predication it is. And by nature, we know things better because the genus, okay, is broader term. It's easier to fit things into a genus. It's easier to classify things. It's easier to identify that that's a member of the genus, okay, because it's broader, it's less specific, and you can see how that dynamic is at play in our reality. All right, so leave that there. It's a heavy lesson, heavy few sentences, and then we'll continue on and we'll finish off this whole section in the next lesson. So I hope you've found that digestible and not too difficult or complex. It's difficult to articulate some of these ideas just by words, and even with art it can be sort of difficult, but I think if you take away, if you're aware of the difference between knowing things by nature and knowing things by the mind, then that's all you need to take away from this lesson. There are some few finer points, but like I've said, these ideas are never abandoned. They will continue to come up constantly throughout the course. So I don't want anyone here trying to be perfectionist and trying to master every single sentence that is being taught immediately. They will just keep coming up. Look, there's the word substance right there, okay? Even grammaticon, right? Grammatical is coming up. And didn't we have examples right here of des grammatikes, ho grammatikos, right? Things just keep coming up. The philosopher doesn't abandon ideas. He builds on them. He constantly builds on them and combines them. And that's what we're going to do constantly throughout it. So I don't want anyone watching this stressed about them feeling like they're missing something. Okay, that's such a human way of learning and being in a learning process, that you feel like you're missing this. You feel like your grasp isn't enough. All right, don't worry about that. If you're combining books with the videos, I'm sure you probably have less of that feeling, but you still may have that feeling, and it could be imaginary. All right, it could just be an imaginary feeling, and you should be reassured by the fact that you'll constantly use the ideas again and again. Okay, so I could be using examples of homonyms, synonyms, and paronyms in the examples I'm giving in this lesson, which I might in the next lesson. You know what? I'll bring them back for the next lesson just to show you how that works. But even these are relevant to what we're learning about. And this was at the start of the course. I don't know what lesson this is. I think this is lesson like 22 or something. And if you're watching this in the future, I'm sure we're still combining the things from these first lessons with things from much later on. We're on page 18 of, 812. Okay, and I can guarantee you pages 1 to 18 are still going to be relevant when we're on pages 800 to 812. You know what, I might even make a mental note that when I get to those pages, I'm going to come back to the first chapters just to prove that it is so. So take that in your stride, and consider that whenever that feeling, that haunting feeling of not grasping something enough, or perfectionism comes knocking at the door, or is crouching at your door. Okay, so my name is Liam. Si semper fortis in opere tuo, and I will see you next time.